Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio, your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Hi, welcome to the Persistence Payoff Show. We're here on USA Global TV and Radio. I'm your host, Kimberly SCHAFER. I'm the inventor of the Ring Thing, which is a waterproof patented ring holder. I'm a first-time entrepreneur and inventor, so I'm really enjoying this next chapter of life. This show is focused on the quality of persistence and the payoffs that it brings us, both in our personal lives and professionally, and there are a lot of them. I'm really interested in talking to people who have this quality and learn from them about their hows and their whys and what lessons they've learned and can share with us. One thing that I'm really coming to see and understand is that quality of persistence can come to us through many different ways. And some of us are just born with that inherent nature that we're going to stick with something and see it through. Other people come to it through hardship and have had to learn it. Other people have modeled themselves on people who are successful and have that quality. So there's a lot of different ways to get that quality. And I'm really interested in talking about it and learning about it. Today, I'm very happy to have as our guest an author of a trilogy, Tong Ge, who has a really wonderful story, both in terms of her own personal journey and her journey as a writer. She was born in China and immigrated to Canada as a student. She went on to get a master's degree, and then she started writing, and she has published poems and prose and novels. And now she has a trilogy that she's finishing. So I'm really excited to talk with her. She's also an award-winning author, and she's the winner of the 2024 Independent Press Award. So please welcome Tong Ge.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here with us. I really appreciate it.
It's an honor for me.
Yeah, thank you. I would love to start by just hearing about your journey as a writer. How did you start? And is it something that you have done since you were young, or did it develop more organically over time?
I fall in love with storytelling since I was a child, influenced by my father. Then in China, during the late 1960s to mid 1970s, we experienced something called the Cultural Revolution. So during these 10 years, from 1966 to 1976, lots of books were banned, books that published in the 50s or earlier. Almost all the good books, include both Chinese books and Western translated books, were banned. So it's not many books we had. There's some Soviet novels were available, and very few revolutionary novels were available. But that's the time once I learned how to read, I read a lot, as much as I could. And I started to telling my friends those stories. Then in the early 80s, China started the economic reform, and university entrance exam was reinstated. So when I was choosing my major, I'd like to study either Chinese literature or journalism, but my parents strongly objected because during the past 10 years or even longer, ever since 1949, writers or journalists were like lots of them were put in jail or even died because of what they wrote. So writing was a dangerous thing. So lots of Chinese parents actually object their children to become a writer. So I studied banking and finance instead for my bachelor's degree. After graduation, I taught in a university for 3 years before came to Canada as a graduate student. Then because I didn't have the money to pay for the tuition, I obtained the scholarship. Then I couldn't start to learn creative writing because there won't be any scholarship. So I studied agricultural economics instead. And so I took a long detour. After graduation, I could only find the job in the field that I was trained for. So I ended up being a financial planner. But the dream of to be a writer has never died. I wrote a lot of poems when I was in college in China, in Chinese. In 2004, I decided to write my family history into novels. But at the beginning, I didn't believe I could succeed in writing it in English because English is my second language. So I started to write in Chinese. And after a while, I felt I couldn't continue because if I write in Chinese, I couldn't get any help. No beta readers, no critic groups, no feedbacks, no freelance editors, and no publishers. So I had to do it in English. Well, even then, I didn't believe I could do it. So I was looking for a ghostwriter for me, and that didn't work out. So finally, I had to. I realized that I'm the only one. I was the only one who could write this book. So I started to take writing courses and read lots of books, both fiction, nonfiction, and books on writing. My first piece in English was published in 2012 as a personal essay by the PRISM International. So that gave me a great confidence. But it took about 20 years for me to finish this trilogy. It's a long journey.
Yes. Wow. That's an amazing story, and just shows the sort of the burning desire that you had inside to write. And I'm curious, when you were in college in China and there was some danger for writers and journalists, and you mentioned that you were writing on your own, did you have to hide those writings? Like, did you have to do that more in secret, or were you able to share that with your friends?
No, it was not, because I was, my poems was mostly about love, right?
Mhm.
So as long as you don't criticize government or reveal the dark side of the society, of the regime, you're
Yeah.
fine.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as you don't do that. Like they can't take any criticize, even just a little bit. Even the intention is good, even you want them to improve, you cannot criticize them.
Yes. Well, and for you, I mean, what an accomplishment to become not just a published, but an award-winning writer in a second language. And how was that process for you of learning how to structure sentences in a whole different language? Did that come pretty quickly and naturally, or was that its own process?
It was not that quick and easy. When we came here as a student, we had to pass an English exam called English Language for Foreign Students, something like that. Is TOEFL, TOEFL, test of English language for foreign students. So we had the basic English skills, but it was not even sufficient for me to do academic study because we only learned daily, like English enough for daily living, not academically. So every time I try to finish my assignment, I have to check out all the English vocabularies first, all those words I did not know, with a big dictionary. Then before I could start the assignments. even like the professor, when the professor giving lecture, I was not fast enough to take notes. I had to borrow notes from other students. So then writing in fiction is even harder, because fiction involves in different tense and a whole bunch of things. Chinese and English are vastly different two languages, especially grammar aside. Chinese grammar is very easy. For instance, we only have one tense. We only have present tense. We didn't have different tenses. We don't have plurals. Our verbs do not change with subjects. Our preposition are used differently. So it's hard for me to write correctly, consistently. That's why I had to hire freelance copy editors from like day one. I hired them on an installment basis because I felt embarrassed to present my writing to my critique group, because I first did that and they start to correct my grammatic mistakes. So I thought that was too much for them, and I also felt embarrassed. So I hired an editor. Every time I finished 2 chapters, I would send to her. She would copy editing for me. Then I'll present to the critique group. Then later I hired freelance developmental editors and manuscript evaluators and beta readers and whole 9 yards. After I revised based on the feedback, then I had to hire the copy editor once more because I have made so many changes. So it's a big commitment, both in terms of time and money. And but I was determined.
Well, yes, and kudos to you. I mean, because in the midst of all of that, you're also writing and you're paying attention to the story and the content of what you're writing. And so I'm really so impressed and inspired that you were able to do all of that in sync. That while you're going through all of that process, you're also creating an award-winning writing and books. And so congratulations. That's all of it's a huge accomplishment. And I'm curious about the trilogy. So my understanding is that it's based somewhat on your own family history. And I'm curious to know a little bit more about the trilogy and the story itself. And also, over that 20-year journey, was it kind of an evenly paced, about 6 or 7 years between each of the books, or how did the trilogy unfold over that 20 years?
Actually, I first wrote a big long book with 240,000 words, and I finished that in end of 2018, and I couldn't find a publisher. So at first I didn't know why until a mentor of mine told me that it was too long. For literary fiction, it was way too long. She suggested me to divide into 2 or 3 books. That's how the trilogy or finished at the same time, because it's one long book and divided by 3, into 3. And each book is focuses on one generation. So the first book, The House Filler, is based on my grandmother's story. And the second book is based on my mother's story, like my parents, but mainly my mother. And the third book is based on my own story before I came to Canada. So it's 3 generations of women fighting for survival, independence, and freedom.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's an incredible sequence of within the same family. And I understand that in the first book, in the House Filler, with your grandmother's story, where her feet were bound as a young woman. Is that?
Yeah.
She had to go through that. Oh my.
Yeah, in Chinese culture, for like about 1,000 years, women's beauty was not measured by their looks, but by the size of their feet. So the tinier the feet, the more desirable. So for about 1,000 years, Chinese parents would band their daughters' feet in order for them to marry well. Golden Phoenix, being a motherless child, her foot binding process didn't start until she was 6. So the ideal binding time was like 4 or 5. 6 was a bit too old, and That's one reason she didn't achieve the ideal size of 3-twin golden lily size. So golden lily size is about 4 inches long.
Yeah.
And her feet was 1 inch too long. And also she was trained as a seamstress and then became the breadwinner of the family. So that's how she missed her ideal marriage age until she was 26. By when she was like way too old to marry a young lad in her age group. So she ended up marrying a widower. Again, in Chinese culture, in the old time, a woman who marries a widower is called a house filler. That's how the title comes from.
Wow.
Yeah.
And when you were writing this, are these stories that you knew from your own just growing up in family lore, or did you actually sit down with your grandmother and then your mother and interview them and pull out some of these stories?
Actually, I only met my grandmother once when I was about 3 or 4 years old, probably about 4 years old. So my mother is the one who told me her family story from like ever since I was a young child. But when I started writing the book, I interviewed my other families, like family members and relatives. And I also went back to China in 2015 to do the research. So I actually visited my grandmother's hometown. And so for her life story, it's based on my family, the information my family provided. But for some significant historical events and some other thing, I have done like a huge amount of research. Thanks to the internet, I was able to purchase the photocopies of the newspaper published in the 1930s and 40s.
Wow.
And some part in the novel was directly from the newspaper. I just need to change. For one part, I just need to change the setting and put the golden phoenix and the master Chen into that thing. And another newspaper report about the children's performance art group that was directly from the local newspaper published at that time. And also, I also read lots of books. I found that when you write a historical fiction, sometimes just read the books written by people like by today's author about the time is not enough. You need to. I read lots of novels published during that time, 20s and 30s and 40s, especially the fiction. It gives you the details. Right, just a normal historical book, history book. You don't, like the clothes people wear, the traditions, the wedding traditions, the funeral traditions, the building, the like the architect, the everything, fashion, and do they have makeup at the time? Do they have glass? Do they have like electricity? Like, how do you learn this without reading all these books? So that's how lots of details became very authentic and vivid.
Wow. Oh my gosh, what an incredible process. And how was it when you got to the part where you were writing your own story? What was that experience like for you to write about yourself and your own journey?
Actually, when at first I didn't start with a big long book. I wrote a part of my own story into a novella with only 8 chapters, and I sent it to different publishers. And there's a small publisher in Edmonton. They got back to me. I really appreciate that they gave me the feedback. Nowadays, you don't hardly get any feedback, right? If they don't publish your writing, they don't. But the feedback I got was they had a 2 readers group read all the submissions. In my case, they have 1 group, but in my case, it's divided into 2 groups. One group is for the publication, another group is against. They had a debate, and the group that against the publication won the debate. So that's how my writing was not published. But the feedback was they sensed there's a much bigger story behind this novella, and they wish me to expand it into a novel, which was true. I was just too anxious to send out, whatever I finished. I felt as a huge accomplishment already by writing this, but they said, okay, they felt I needed to expand it into a novel. So that was a time when I had to tell myself, no rush, be patient. If it takes years to finish, it takes years to finish. I can't wish for that instant gratification. Is that instant gratification? So basically, I just settled myself down and told myself this is for long haul. That's how I finished this whole trilogy after so many years. Yeah, that was also 2012 when that novella was rejected. So that is part of my own story. But of course, the third book is not the longest one and with more like details because it's my own. It is based on my own experience. The first book is shortest one because I don't know. I know my grandma's story, but not as much with much details as my own. So first book is shortest one, second book is mid-length, and the third book is the longest one.
Well, that's, it's so interesting when you mentioned that the group voted against publishing. And so often when we hear a no, so you got a no, but it actually was a gift in that it was a larger yes. So it was an immediate no, but there was a big yes behind it, which is that we actually want more and we want you to do more and to write more. And so, I think it's to your credit that you absorbed that and you didn't get just put off by the no, but you listened to the larger message and did it. And here you have the trilogy now.
Exactly. That's I would call it a blessing in disguise because
yes.
If that piece was published, I won't be happy with it. It was okay, but not as good as my later writing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and what is your internal talk to yourself in those kind of moments when, maybe you got the no and you needed to put more work into it, or if you've had moments of getting discouraged, what is your inner self-talk to just keep yourself going and to continue to push through?
I hardly had to do self-talking because I'm so passionate about it. It's not, to me, it's not a hardworking, it's not a chore. It's the thing I'm enjoying doing. So actually, I work on commission. I also suffer long-term disability. I have repetitive injuries on my both arms. So I lost my previous job working for government and started a new job based on commission, like commission only. But that gave me the flexibility in terms of hours. So for the first 15 years, I would go to work, work on my day job from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Then after 9 p.m., I start to write. Usually I write 1, 2, or 3, 4 hours. So I call this time my happy hours. So every day I'm looking forward to this happy hour so I can put my daytime job aside and start to write. There's only one time I had to do some self-talking. It was a very scary moment. So after I finished the trilogy, I had a mentor, but because I think she's more a type of a commercial fiction type of person, I'm not good at writing commercial fiction. My thing is like a literary fiction. So she want me to change my structure of my book from the middle point, like a current book, like actually from middle point. Then try to stuff the first half into the second half as like a flashback or backstories. I couldn't do it. It was extremely hard for me. I couldn't do it. So for a moment, I thought, okay, is that like all my work, all those years of hard work will be wasted? Like my book would never be good enough, will be never published. That was really, really scary. Then I learned that I have to follow my own intuition. Like, especially also sometimes you have two, professional, either mentors or editors. They give you different advice in conflict, like a conflict advices. Which one do you take? At the beginning, I did not know. When you're not good in, like, you just did not know when you start up. So then I think when this happens, I just need to put the book aside and distance myself from the story for some times and read some other novels and fictions and good ones. Then when you come back, you can figure out which advice is like the one for you. It's just experience. I had that one horrific moment. I thought, will all this be wasted?
Yes.
That is worse than death for me.
I can imagine after all of that work, and
Yes.
yeah, and really that you stuck it through and you kept going, and now as you move forward with publications, are you much quicker to sort of get to that point of following your intuition? Like, has it made you stronger in following your own inner voice?
Yeah, I think it's made me stronger to follow my inner voice. In terms of publication, it took me 4 years to sell my first book. Nothing's easy for me. I I don't know how some people, they get overnight success. Like they're extremely lucky. There's a very few people who can achieve that. Most people is like takes a long time. For me, everything I do takes extra long time. Either writing or my professional job or my just for some reason it's always harder. The life is harder for me. I don't know if God designed this life for me or what. It always takes a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I know I've read about J.K. Rowling's, the author of Harry Potter, and I don't remember the exact number, but she had to go to something like 18 or 20 publishers before anyone would take on the first book. And so, I think, and it seemed like an overnight success, but she had to just knock on so many doors. And
Well, actually, that is considered very quick. Most of us, we send out hundreds of query letters. We're talking about in hundreds, like 3 digits. Like I heard that she had to gone through like 11 literary agencies to find her agent. That's pretty quick, actually. Most writers, if you interview them, it takes them much more. Like we're talking about 3 digits at least.
My goodness, this is so interesting because I had no idea. You sort of imagine like some people get it on number 1, and double digits seems like a lot. And so that's wow, that's a lot.
Triple. Lots of writers I talked with, we're talking about triple numbers.
Yes.
Triple digits. Yeah.
So talk about persistence. That's a that's a masterclass in persistence right there.
Yeah.
Just to stick with it. And along the way, as you were working on the trilogy, because I know you also write poetry and prose, do you alternate those, or how do you weave in other types of writing along with the historical fiction?
Now I mainly focus on my novels, but my in the third book, because the protagonist is like myself. Put it straightforward. It's like myself. So because this protagonist is university educated and is love literature, love poetry, and write lots. So I was able to incorporate some poems I wrote way back when in my college life into the book. So now her voice is totally different from Golden Phoenix, right? The Golden Phoenix is illiterate, and she's well educated, and so I'm able to differentiate the two different characters. And the middle one, Mother, is she's very good at science, but not very good at arts or literature or music. She's not even interested in that. So then I portray her just as what she is. So the 3 women are different. In writing, is really the one thing is really hard to overcome is that you write different characters, but they all sound like alike, right? The way they talk, the way they think, the books they read. It's almost like sometimes I think the writer made a mistake. The writer write lots of fictions, literary fictions, and and then they put that into their character. But you're really thinking, wow, sounds like a person with an English major, right? Doesn't sound like the real character. Really, she write all that books. So I think one has to be really careful. I mean, when we write, we're always a part of ourselves are in a book. I heard this over and over again. We always write ourselves in, but you have to be really careful. Like in Golden Phoenix, I don't, well, other than, the persistence and resilient and hardworking and, steadfast, upright. Other than this, like in other aspects, there's nothing similar between her and me. So I have to be really careful. And how she talk, I have to be really, really careful. She talk really simple language, right? Even in English, I cannot. That's another thing. You have to be really careful when you use ChatGPT to check your grammar. I use ChatGPT to check my grammatic mistakes, and then it gave me suggestions. No, I said Golden Phoenix would never talk this way. No, this is way too formal. This word is way too big. No way. So you have to have that ability to tell which advice you need to get and which one you have to reject. You have to be able to do that.
Yeah. Oh, that makes really good sense. And along the way, like, you have this passion for writing, so it's a part of your being, but have you ever had an experience of writer's block? Have you ever gotten to a point where you're just, it's not coming out? And, if you have faced that, how have you dealt with it?
I have never had that. Actually, my hands are not fast enough.
Ah, okay, good.
Sometimes I lost a part of the story because because of my injury, and my hands were not fast enough, and then it got lost. So it's I think my case is a little bit different than lots of other people. I once wrote outline of a science fiction. I would never thought I would write a science fiction until that time. And I mean, it's not a simple outline. It's like pages of pages. Like I was at a point that I didn't eat or sleep or shower for I don't know. I felt like for days, and I was like frantically write everything down until my hands couldn't handle it anymore. I had to stop. And now I don't know where I stored that outline too. So no, I'm not fast enough. That's my problem.
Yes. Oh my. And when you're writing, do you type it or do you write it longhand?
I used to write in longhand until recently because now Microsoft voice recognition is so much better than before. So now I'm able to dictate. But before, even when I start to write, there's a dictation software called JAW, or it's called JAW, JAW, just called JAW. It's really hard for me to use it because of my accent. So my inaccuracy rate is pretty high, or my accuracy rate is too low. Then I have to go back to use hand to correct all the mistakes. That feels even more work than you just type. So recently, I mean, pretty much after I finished the trilogy, the dictation works so much better now.
Yes. Well, and now that you've finished the trilogy, and as you look at it and you look at each of the 3 books, including the part about yourself, do you feel that you came out of that a different person? Are there things that you learned about yourself that you didn't expect as part of that journey of writing it all down?
Well, I think one thing I learned is that I can do this. Because as I said in the beginning, I didn't believe I could. I didn't. Now I'm more confident, much more confident, and I think each book will become better because I'm still learning. I'm still improving, and hopefully it won't take another 20 years to finish my trilogy. That's what I'm hoping. And also, there's something I knew from way even before I started. I don't believe or expect overnight success, so I'm not terribly disappointed when that did not happen. Because as I said, a very small percentage of people have that luck. Most people, we don't. As you said, some people, it seems like they achieved overnight success, but they actually worked pretty hard before that. Yeah, even like Microsoft, when I write the biography of Bill Gates, they worked like 10 years before they were so-called successful. That was like 10 years before that. So a lot of cases, like you don't know how much hard work these people put in until one day, oh, they're overnight success. No, they're not. It took a long time.
That's a really good lesson, and it's also, I think now I'm going to look at books differently, when I'm reading, or if I'm reading like whatever the #1 on the New York Times bestseller list is, I'll be looking at it differently because of this conversation that, yes, they've had this success, but what went into it and what was behind it. And
yeah.
Well, what are you working on next? Are you focusing now on the trilogy and helping to get that out in the world, or are you on to your next book already?
I'm trying to get my second book published. As I said, it seems nothing goes smooth for me. So that's what I'm focused on. And also I'm translating the first book into Chinese. And the next trilogy I haven't started. Oh, I'm revisit my diaries and the correspondence from friends from the time like after I graduate from college in China until 1990, end of 1992, beginning of 1993. So I'm getting myself emotionally ready for the next book, because next book will be much, much harder emotionally for me than the first 3 books. Because next book is about me, and I have gone through a lot, and that'll be emotionally hard. So now I try to ease into that. And I think lots of time you need to get emotionally ready. Like there's something I still couldn't write even today, like after 20 years. Something happened 20 years ago, I still couldn't write today emotionally. So that's what I'm doing right now. And revisit those records of the history.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm going to look forward to reading that. I think you have an incredible story. So I think it's going to be a very powerful book. And I look forward to that. And as we're coming to a close, I wanted to find out if you could let us know how people can connect with you. If they want to learn more about you or about the trilogy and about your writings, how can they find you?
I have a website. It's tong-ge.com. Yeah, just my name, tong-ge.com. And I'm not very good at social media. I'm still learning. I try to be active on social media. I have if you search Tong Ge, I'm on X, on Facebook, Instagram, but I'm not good at it at all. Also, I have to be careful with my hands because of my disability, my injury. I need to preserve my hands for writing. If I get too much work too much on social media, on promoting all that, I may damage my hands to a point that I can't write anymore. So yeah, my case is a bit different.
Yes. Oh, that makes sense. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And I think you're absolutely right to prioritize your writings. I can completely understand that. This has been such a...
Sorry, I just want to add one thing.
Sure.
When people look for my book on Amazon, if you just type in the title, usually you get a whole bunch of household items. So you really need to also type in the author's name before you can find it. So usually you put either by Tong Ge or a hyphen or something, then you find it right away.
Okay, so they can put in house filler and then your name, Tong Ge.
Yeah.
And then
Hyphen, Tong Ge. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, thank you for clarifying that, because it's true. Amazon, you never know what's going to come up. So if people can be specific, they'll be able to find you.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I've learned so much, and just I'm so inspired by your story, what's happened so far and what's to come. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Kim. Really appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. And, you know, I try to, I end every show with a quote. And so I found one today from Bill Bradley. And he says, ambition is the path to success. Persistence is the vehicle you arrive in. And I feel like this quote really is appropriate to the conversation today, because Tong Ge has been so persistent, and that's her vehicle that she's arriving in. And she's doing it beautifully. So I'm here every second Tuesday at noon Pacific time. You can see the Persistence Payoff show live, and it's also available to play anytime on YouTube. You can find me personally at ringthing.com and on Instagram at ring_thing_. And I'm available and happy to talk anytime. So thank you so much, everyone, and please take care. Bye-bye.
In a world full of noise, misunderstandings, and interruptions, master the art of listening with Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck is the listening mentor of USA Global TV and Radio, and the Amazon #1 best-selling author of Mastering the Power of Elevated Listening. Elevate your listening. Elevate your life. Join a global learning experience in person or via Zoom. Reserve your spot today. usaglobaltv.com/book-your-session or drjacqueline.thinkific.com. Join Dr. Kerbeck's listening courses or hire her to unlock deeper connections and authentic conversations.